Hello, welcome to Fallout Podcast episode 130 something. MES Solo 4, aka The Rest Are Paced. It is a futile fall showdown. All 525 songs still going head to head, but not tonight. Tonight we are looking at the final set of Mark E. Smith's solo and collaborative efforts. We've done 3 of these episodes already, and 5 tunes will go through to the next round, which will leave us with the 20 most best MES songs, which is the whole idea is remarkable that he had like 70 or 80 tracks in this kind of thing. But anyway, I digress. I'm joined by the Pemberton Walker. How are you, Alistair?
I'm all right. My calves hurting because of all the walking I've been doing.
Bloody hell, probably the size of watermelons. How about we're joined by a good friend, DB, stands for decibels. How are you? Are you there, Dan?
You've updated my intro because I'm now ex-Total Victory rather than current freed from the prison of indie rock.
XTV. Yeah,
XTV.
I saw the media post. Is there a story? Has mad shit gone down, or is it just time to move on?
Bit of both. Well, not mad shit. Our guitarist left, slap batted the possibility of a last tour. If we'd have done a last tour, we'd have finished the album, but no, we won't do either.
Oh my goodness. Well, will that album be lost into the purgatory, or is there some salvageable stuff to be released on Bandcamp?
Yeah, the latter.
The latter. All right. Well, anyway, Total
30
Victory.
people will be very pleased.
Yes. A top-notch band who are now lost to the annals of time. Also, Stu has thrown in his tuppence, but yeah, as I was saying, so Al, this is the 4th one of these. How are you feeling?
Well, normally end up kind of like losing the will to live by the end of these ones. They are tricky at times, but they do throw up some gems, don't they? You know, and some anti-gems, whatever you'd call them. Yeah.
I think we've kind of got our head around what it means to listen to Smith's solo output at this point. So it's a little bit of Panda and post-Neely Man stuff thrown in with some Von Sudenfed and the odd digression into madness. Dan, what was your take on coming into this at this stage in the event?
Oh, a few years ago I did a full listen through the full discography, but I also did Post-Neely Man and PPP.
Yeah.
And I didn't like those at the time, although there were a couple of good bits, so especially on Post-Neely Man. This has made me reappreciate those, and yeah, it's given me pause for thought because there's definitely some good stuff here. And I listened to a couple of previous things that you've talked about, and I like those as well. So I feel a bit more positive and energized and refreshed by the possibility of MES solo. There's something different here.
There's something different. Those 2 albums, it does take a little while to get your head around, and what I've did is sacrilege in splitting up the Panzer into its segments, but I mean that was the only real way we could ever have incorporated into this. But it is worth a listen all the way through. It's up there with the Train Part 4 remix, the 45-minute remix. But anyhow, we're going to start tonight by the tracks that didn't get any love at all. So Repetition, the Tackhead cover, which on New Sound is involved. Sherwood's involved. Real Good Time, the Velvet Underground cover that Blaney and Smith slapped together, and a couple of PPP music interstitial points on the PPP journey. I'll play Repetition and Real Good Time, and I'll get your one sentence take on those 2 first. So sit back and enjoy the least loved Smith outings from this round, and no doubt some Japanese adverts as well.
Repetition, keep moving to your own repetition. As Dr. John Boring had a real township, he loved repetition. All over. We're gonna have a real good time together.
We're gonna laugh and dance and shout together. We're gonna have a real good time together. There you go. That's about as much as we need of those two. So, Dan, what's your take on the Tackhead repetition first up?
Like children wearing daddy's clothes, doing an impression of him. Just the worst of music.
Weak industrial dub, awful interpolation. MES just slapped on, and apparently, this is Adrian Sherwood and the entire Sugar Hill Gang playing this. I don't know if they were on it, but that was originally Tackhead, was like Keith LeBlanc and Doug Wimbish. Oh my God, Alistair, Tackhead repetition. What's your thoughts?
Well, listening to this, it just reminded me and reinforced exactly all the reasons why I've never listened to Tackhead. It's a band I've been aware of since the 1990s, and it's just sort of like, no. It's like Bad Ministry or Pop-Elite itself or something.
Yeah, and even that imagery, right there, it covers is like a Pop-Elite itself kind of thing. It was, let's move on. It got no love. It got 0 points from any of us, and it's well deserved. But second was
there was some comedy slap bass on it. That's the only redeeming feature.
I mean, it's Doug Wimbish. He's a classic bass player, and yeah, he played the bass line on Rapper's Delight. It's like it's the same guy. I don't know what and how they ended up doing a very poor cover version of Repetition. But Dan, what about the Velvet Underground travesty?
This was like closing time at a pub in hell. This was just it's the worst of Blaney and Smith, I think, including that 45 minutes. I hated it. I never want to hear it again. I almost hate you for inflicting it upon me.
Yeah. Sweet Jane, it is not, and it's just Smith is just it's insipid. The picked guitar for the first minute or so is good. To be honest, though, the Velvet Underground version is pretty terrible. I don't know if you've heard it's a poor song to start with.
I'm not a Velvets fan, so it ticks no boxes for me.
I've got time for them, but no, I'm not an apologist. I'm not a Lou Reed apologist. Alistair, are you a Lou Reed apologist?
Oh yeah, no, I don't do like Velvets. Do like Lou stuff. This, however, I didn't enjoy it too much. Thank you very much, Brendan.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'll just drop in with this couple of the Panda Panzer Music 3 and 14. We'll just have a little foray into those. Very short pieces, but some sweetness even hidden in there.
Joining in maths supper and ear-breaking, stomach and rash-inducing vitriol and fury, gas boiler-like melting into cellar.
Very nice. Pan pipes, synth stabs, and an announcer in 27 seconds for Music 3, and selected ambient works MES in a 30-second slurry, sweet pitch down PP Music 14. However, again, none of us gave it any points whatsoever. What did you make of those two little blips?
They're quite nice, really. I think they just ended up down the bottom of the running order because the length of them wasn't massive, was it? Really reminded me of Chris Morris Blue Jam or Jam, the radio show, the stuff they'd have going on in the background almost constantly, like slightly David Lynchian. But yeah, nice.
I still think we haven't yet found out who made those tracks, because I'm assuming MES wasn't directly involved, and assumed it was Julia because she was around on the scene at the time, and Eleni was just kind of coming in. But I still don't know who made it. Dan, what do you make of those little blips and those kind of interludes in general?
The reason I didn't respond to them very well when I first heard them is I was listening to a lot of like college freeform radio at the time, and they have this kind of thing of DJs who have like backing music, so they sound like kind of the reporting from the beyond. And I find it a bit cheesy in that kind of slightly undergraduate way. Coming back to it now, I prefer some of the stuff you've had on other shows that you've cut up. Like there was one that you had on the last one with Phil, and it was like a very reverb drenched vocal thing that sounded a bit like Yellow Swans, or like something that's like very, where you use like the mixing board in a very aggressive musical way. They're not entirely for me, I would say, even though it's better than my initial listen. It's fine. I think it's a project that I just didn't understand at the time, and I'm going to come back to down the road.
Yeah, no. I agree, and it's nice stuff, but again, it maybe doesn't have the substance to stand up on anything other than kind of an in-betweeners. And we're coming now to the next few bubbling under. These got a couple of points. PPP Music 8 got a single point, and then Saturn 5, the Inspiral Carpets, the second Inspiral Carpets feature, the one that nobody knows exists, is out there. So I'll have a listen to, let's have a listen to those two. Listen to Mez really going for it. This is probably the most singing I've ever heard him. And a great sentence there for me. This is probably the most singing I've ever heard him. Dan, what's your take on that little fuzzy feedback PPP Music 8 and of course the monumental Saturn 5 destruction?
I'm having a little trouble with playback, so I didn't hear the PPP one. Yeah. I think I thought about it the same as I thought of the others. It's completely fine. With Saturn 5, one thing I'm always acutely aware of on this podcast is that I'm a little younger than you lot. Yeah. I feel like Inspiral Carpets are a group of your generation, if you know what I mean. Like indie clubs of that day. Whereas like when I was going to indie clubs, like Boone Army was a big thing, that whole thing. But I think the Inspirals are kind of passed on. I actually do really like Saturn 5, but as a kind of a song that's not of my era, it doesn't remind me of my youth at all. I think it's a really beautiful song, really well written. I like Tom Hingley's vocals. I just think Mez is just sort of, his interlocutions don't. I mean, the sick rocket bit is funny. I laugh, but I don't love it. I prefer I Want You by a long stretch for a Mez contribution.
Oh, 100%. This is Saturn 5. No, yeah, you're right. You are a young man in comparison to us, 50-year-old men. But I was a big Inspirals fan, and Saturn 5 was huge, and it is a brilliant pop single. And Mez does not need to be there at all in any way, shape, or form. He really does add to I Want You. It makes the song, and he just does the absolute opposite here, and he massacres that second verse. But he has, blessed his soul, he has a go at singing at the end, and we all know he shouldn't be there, but that's why it's stuck away on the halfway through the B-sides compilation and not in the greatest hits. And yeah, it's like a nice, that PP Music 8 was another example of a variation on the other stuff. It's kind of the pan pipes put in the red. But what did you make of them two?
Yeah, the PPP one, quite like. Reminding me a bit of some stuff I've been doing recently, to tell the truth. Shitloads of reverb, but also it reminded me quite a bit of something you get going on in the background in Doctor Who if you're watching a really old one, like, you know, one
Right.
of the old ones or something, you know, or the Radiophonic Workshop
Exactly.
stuff. So, you know, quite liked it in that respect. The Sam 5, it's, you know, it's a very competent, well-written song. Really like some of the stuff that Clint Boone's doing on it. Just don't like the singy bits on the chorus at all. Like, it's just a bit too sort of like twee, over melodic. Yeah, trying to make it a bit radio-friendly, I think. But some people like those kind of sing-along bits. It's just me as a miserable cunt.
Yeah, it was top
Can I just
20.
jump in?
Top 20. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, on the PPP kind of instrumental stuff, I completely hear what you're saying, Aldo, about like the radiophonic stuff. And I think there's a lot of what he's doing on that record that is definitely inspired by something quite highbrow. But I'm not asking him to be a kind of a GRM workshop kind of, you know, Bernard Parmigiani type. But like those people who did that kind of music were often like brilliant traditional composers, and like MES is a spirited amateur on the, and you can kind of see why it doesn't quite stack up as well. Like they're nice sounds, and I'm actually glad that Brendan split them into smaller digestible chunks. I wonder if I'd be able to hack it at length.
Well, there's something lost by the fact that they're just a little bit of a palate cleanser, a little bit of an interim thing between his spoken word pieces, which is clearly what the album is about. So really, they shouldn't really be up for consideration, but it is good to know that this is something he curated. And but yeah, there's an amateurish whiff about it, which has its own charm. It's the boffins at NASA wouldn't be happy with this kind of stuff. But then where do we go next? So PPP Music 30, the Saturn V got 3 points. Who blessed it with a few points was I think it was me. Yeah, I gave it a couple of points. No. Al, you put it in, like, you did a very convoluted thing as always by giving me like 7 things that all got the same points. But you gave it a little bit of love. And then the last of the PPP musics is in here next, along with Luddite and the Elastica Dave Bush vehicle KB. So I'll play those 3, and that will take us to towards the showdowns. And Dan, if you can't hear, you can play along with the playlist if you want.
Yeah,
home.
I will. I'll have to do that, I think.
See what happens. But don't worry, I know it's all locked in the vault, so don't worry.
Says this. From the province, and it drums and bass, from your cheating years, flowing down real time, from the curious, flowing down.
But he's singing Mountain Energy, isn't he? which didn't come out for a few years, so that's pretty cool. What did you make there? We had 10 seconds of PPP Music 13. Luddite 2, which is another Blaney and Smith joint, and the Elastica EP track KB. What do you reckon, Al?
Never been a fan of Elastica, really. And those synths on it, like, just reminded me of like Paris Angels or something like that. It's just not very nice. It just sounded like a big studio track, really. Something that's just been pieced together. I don't mind some of the guitar, the riffing, and the bass and the drums, but it's nothing that I'd get out of bed for, really. The Luddite 2 one. Can't find my notes for that. Can't remember hearing it. But yeah, bet it was all right, really, Brendan, wasn't it?
Well, that one's like a lot of Blaney's tracks are just his acoustic jangly stuff that he slapped Smith on, but this one is actually, it looks like he's actually given Mez something that's a lot more Fall-like, something a little bit more noisy and experimental.
It was like, because it was dead mechanical, it reminded me a bit of like some like Can, but it just, Crate Rocky type thing, but it just gets a bit boring, and it is kind of a bit predictable.
It's very simple, right, isn't it? And so if I'm in the right mood, I quite like it. It's quite a sweet one. Blaney's basically just made FX kind of bed for Smith to kind of ramble on and sing his song. And and the PPP music, even though it's 10 seconds, it's like it just reminded me of like it's like the thing from Hallelujah by the Mondays, but just battered. And Smith does it in like 10 seconds. That's all the time he gives it. I like the KB one, as you know, when Dave Bush dropped by, he did tell us about like they grabbed Smith from the pub next door and they jumped on that Elastica Man track first, and then it was like, oh well, we've got a bit of time, let's just jam out something. And actually, the drums and the synths I actually like with Smith, but just the generic indie kind of like jangly stuff isn't there. And then I was just surprised that this was 99 and he was singing the melody from Mountain Energy, which he brings back in 2003. So maybe there was something in it. What do you reckon to these three, Dan?
The Elastica one I thought was quite good. I considered it for my top 5 before it got relegated. I really like that guitar. I think it's a really lovely sound, and it sounds like, I take Al's point. It does sound assembled later rather than organically kind of written, but it's fine. It's good. I think maybe Mez is one of the weaker parts of it, possibly. Feels like sacrilege to say that. The Blaney one, it just feels like a lot of British guys around the mid-noughties discovered krautrock or discovered the motoric beat. They didn't really discover krautrock. They discovered a particular 4/4 beat.
Yeah.
And this, and I should know because I was one of them. It just feels a bit rubbish to me. Like I quite like. At first, I was like, okay, like this is relatively formal, and then it just doesn't do out. I just don't rate the Blaney stuff, to be honest. I find it a little bit like, is he doing his mate a favour? Is he trying to pay a divorce? Like, what's going on here? This is not up to his own usual standards. And even when it's rubbish, it's not rubbish in the way that he's normally rubbish.
No, I get you. I think to some extent he's helping Blaney out, but there are some moments on there that I quite like. But generally, if it's Blaney does his own songs and they don't necessarily need Mez. Whether or not you like him is fair enough. But they're putting them together. There's only a couple. There's one called Metal Claw I liked, and there's their cover of Transfusion was decent. But yeah, when there's more Mez in the mix. But yeah, this one, fair enough. And the Elastica one has its charm. Stu put it in his 6th place. Alistair put it joint 3rd. But then again, he put like 6 songs joint 2nd, so that means that it wasn't really that high. And it didn't get any points from me. Got a couple from you, Dan. Just sneaked it in there, but it wasn't hitting the heights. He got 10 points overall, so not bad, but a couple of points off getting into the playoff. So the way this works now is as we do a playoff, the winning track, the one that got the most points, goes through automatically. I'll tell you that at the end. But now we've got 5th versus 6th, 4th versus 7th, 3rd versus 8th, and 2nd versus 9. So the 5th place was 70s Night with 16.5 points, and that is up against PPP1 which also got 16.5 points. So let's have a listen. Let's start with 70s Night, the Edwyn Collins feature.
Shop was being filled. 1,000 thrills, 1,000 things to do. A major kickback is not
I just got lost in the magic there. Dan, what did you make of 70s Night? You put it as your top choice. This was your favorite track of the evening.
Slightly regretted afterwards because I thought maybe another one deserved to go at the moment. I would still put it in the top 3, definitely. I would say I just really like this Edwyn Collins album, and I think it's got a lot of different like pastiches or kind of like meta commentaries on pop, because that's the one with Magic Piper of Love, Adidas World on. I just think that he really adds to this. MES adds to this. I like the kind of the sleazy vibe. I think I like that the groove really does grow. It doesn't just it ceases to be pastiche partway through and just feels like very like organic, very like good interplay. And I would DJ this. I think it's like just a really good vibe. It's like a piss take and also a serious 70s sleazoid classic. I think I love this. I love Edwyn Collins. So I mean that's where I am.
Yeah, you're a little bit on your own there. I marked it way down, and Stu didn't put it in any points. Alistair put it as his second best choice as well there. So what did you make of 70s Night, Al?
I thought it was really well written, even if it is a pastiche. It's a very good pastiche. Reminded me a lot of like the mashup stuff that you get nowadays. Like things like DJ Cummerbund. And you could easily have swapped, like Mark Smith for something like David Byrne in there, and it worked well. I just thought it was very competent, very listenable, and you could DJ it down and it'd be quite good.
I'm not feeling it quite as much. I said squelch. I like the squelch and MES kind of growling over the kind of vague funk and the vocoder call and response. Found like a black grape, Happy Mondays kind of vibe going on it, and he's in there. He's in the mix. And one of the things we've criticized before with guest spots of MES, like Tackhead, for example, just slapped in the middle, just like an extra kind of piece, but he's there from start to finish on this, and he's a meaningful part. If you replaced him with someone else, it would be a very different song, and I like it. I can't help but thinking that he's kind of stepping on his own look back Boris kind of feet there, and whether or not he's this is ironic enough, or whether it is just falling into that category of kind of like Bee Gees covers that were big in the early 90s. Fun though, yeah. Dan?
Yeah, because I think that's kind of like Edwyn Collins around this time very much. He's kind of, is this a piss take of like the Isley Brothers, or is this just an Isley Brothers song? Or like, I don't know if you ever saw him on Eurotrash where he does a cover of Ding a Dong by Teaching, and like he clearly loves the song, but he's also, his whole kind of get up is a bit piss taking. I think MES probably saw that piss takiness, and it wasn't too look back. Even if it is look back, this is a good look back. So I'm more than happy. I'm glad that I gave it 10 now, because I feel if I'd have given it less, it wouldn't be in this playoff. Or would it?
It would have been further down and had a harder fight. It's got its best chance against Mez's intro to PPP, I think.
What I would also say about this one is I can totally understand if an established, long-standing Fall fan dismisses this with like abandon. I can see it.
Yeah, it's almost like one of those like, oh, Edwyn Collins, I quite like him, and Smith, of course, and then you listen and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's a one-off listen. For me, I know Edwyn Collins gave him a lot of studio time around this time, and again, I wonder to what extent is Smith doing him a favor. But I also think, maybe he did really love it and wanted to be involved. So hard to say. What are you going to say, Al?
Can't remember.
Can't remember. Moving on. PPP. So Smithy's introduction, essentially, a kind of series of ideas that come back all the way through his Panzer album, and this really kind of sets out the stall for what he's all about, which is incredibly hard to understand.
Panda as to Panda to Panda animal Panzer Panda Panzer. The outside flavorness of it. The besuited Eurobase stalks, not knowing.
Everybody knows this. 19. Let's get all this rigmarole in a camp.
It's a little village
that soon
that
finds
soon
himself
finds
spending most
himself
of his
spending
time in
most
the
of his time in the
laundrette, or
laundrette.
alternatively in the...
And so on. Dan, what of this stall setting?
I did put this into my top 5, despite being on record on this podcast as not loving the album. I think coming back to it, this was the thing that made me really want to check the album out again. I really love, I wonder if this phrase has been said in however many hours, I really love his diction. Like, I really love the way he says words and rolls them in his mouth. And I really love the kind of the anti-logic of the poetic form. Like, it really kind of puts me in like a mind of like, sorry to use a cinema reference, but like something like Alan Rene, like last year Marienbad, where it's just kind of, what is this sequence of events? This is a programmed logical sequence of events in this artist's mind, and I need to figure this puzzle out, and I want to, and I love. Is it Julia on this as well?
That's Eleni, I think. Eleni, that's Eleni speaking for sure. I'm not sure if Julia is involved in the backing or whether that's Eleni as well.
Yeah, I love the counterpoint between them. Like, I really hear this as like a piece of music rather than a piece of spoken word, but one that's formed out of voice and rhythm. I can't say enough good things about this. I think it's really, I think it really captures what MES is, maybe more than anything on a Fall record at times. I think it's like a real pure bit of MES.
I agree, and I think that's why we all recognize something in it, even though it is essentially just one of many spoken word pieces. But there's more to it. It isn't. It does seem, even though it's very hard to work out what his meaning actually is, that it does seem like there's something deeper in there, and that idea of when I was 10 and when I was 50, and it's kind of a life story, like a Solomon Grundy thing, and then that idea of just throwing out those 3 images of Panda and Panzer, but never explaining them. But we know enough about Smith to kind of start filling in the gaps of what he might think. I enjoy it a lot, and I think it's a really great kind of spoken word intro. Yeah. Dan?
Very quickly, my only issue with Panda Panzer as a title is it reminds me of Machine Head's Realize. It's not quite as deep and meaningful as that. But,
no. But the great art. They're all.
They're all in communion.
They're all in communion, exactly. It's something in the air. Alistair, what did you think of PPP1? You put it again as your joint second place.
Yeah, I did. There's something about it that I really like. I think it's probably one of the strongest ones on the PPP LP. And they obviously recognise it because it's how to sort of like drag you into it. And Yeah, there's loads of hiss and stuff that's going on in the background that I really like. It gives it sort of like a texture. And with the sort of like the delay with the kind of like call and response thing with the vocal, with the male female sort of thing. It reminded me a bit of like when you're watching the news and there's somebody who's sort of like they got an interpreter. So yeah, it was. There's something about it I can't quite put my finger on, but it gets my interest.
Yeah, indeed. There's a lot about it, and this is actually a bit of a tricky vote because, not much of the spoken word stuff's got through. A couple, I think the figure in clay, which is the Lovecraft thing's got through, and a couple of other smaller things, but there's not much. If that sways you in any way,
it does make me think back to Trout Mask as well, like with like some of the spoken word bits on that. The approach probably did influence Mark Smith.
It's just so interesting that these two flew so heavily under the radar. I mean, until I started doing this, I think if I'd heard any of it, it was just a little snippet here and there. I'd not spent any time with this stuff, but it's as good in parts as some of the, and it's just really funny in parts, and it's just it just adds another element to what Smith was. Versus some trashy 70s parody. So let's take a vote. Alistair, are you putting PPP or 70s Night through?
I'll go with PPP.
Alrighty. Dan, which way are you gonna go?
Even though I kind of talked myself into PPP maybe being better, I'm going to stay with my top 10. So I'm going to go 70.
Indeed, you should. So, Stu's vote, I'm going to go off the strength of which one he put first, and he didn't have either of them in his top 10. In fact, he only gave me 7 and then said the rest are paste. So I don't know what he thinks about any of these things, but that's Stu for you. He's a man of integrity. So I get the deciding vote, and I am going to put PPP through. But yes, thank you for your opinions on those things. They are valid and taken into consideration. And next up, we had the fourth track. The fourth place, which was the Fledermaus von Sudenfed track, which got 21 points. And it's up against the seventh place, which was the other von Sudenfed track, Duck Rog, which got 15 points. So let's have a look at Fledermaus Can't Do It, or whatever it's called. Oh, first, actually, when I was doing this research for this stuff, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, Dan, but I came across something on the Daily, not the Daily Mash, it's one of those kind of things, and it was a mashup of Panzer with the music from some other Fall song, and with a focus on his Harry Hill baiting.
Doc, what's it about?
Oh yeah, it's What About Us. Can you hear that, Dan? Is it coming through?
Yeah.
Panda, Panda. Panda, Panda. Pandas for Scotland from China, woo! We're sending them to Embra Zoo in Kirstoffen and Who's Who. What do you say, Mark?
Panda. Large NHS spectacles, Nettie. Encapsulates.
Maybe Harry Hill Miranda watching telly. Miranda, or maybe Harry Hill. What do you say, Mark?
Harry Hill encapsulates everything wrong with British society.
Now then, young man, he says, I've never heard him say more like Brian Clough than in that thing. Anyway, it's fun, and I'll put the link in there because I don't want to say, that I stole this. It still belongs to the Daily Mash people, whoever. And they're playing What About Us, which is delightful, almost in a Frank Sidebottom style. Alistair, what did you make of the oh, I've not played it yet.
No, it was lovely, Brendan.
All right, I'm going to play the one Sudenfed Fledermaus Can't Get It official video, which is very fun.
Can't get it now. I can't
The Fledermaus Can't Get It. Alistair, what do you reckon to that?
Yeah, that's quite nice. It's a nice groove going on, some good shouting. I quite like how minimal it is, so it's not too fancy pants. It gets your groove in. Reminds me a bit of like T. Romesmere stuff, or like stuff on Shit Catapult from about 2000 or something like that. But yeah, I reckon if this in a nightclub, played at number 11, you'd certainly be wanting to get down onto the dance floor or shit your pants.
Freshbat.cock for sure. Yeah, I think I do love the minimalism, and I actually kind of wish it had even stayed more minimalist. But it's definitely up there. It's one of my favorite Von Sudenfed tunes. Great video as well. And I said, this is to Losing My Edge what Come to Daddy is to Firestarter. It's just taken an idea and just ratcheted it up like all the way, and it's really good. Ring modulation and some subtlest kind of layers coming in. Yeah, this was right towards the top for me. I put it in second. I won't reveal what my first was, but yeah, it's right up there. Dan, what do you make of this one?
Video's quite a difficult work, but the song's pretty good. In fact, I think I did DJ this one. Maybe not on 11, because I think the people at the Lux wouldn't like me, or whatever indie club in Wigan it was. Yeah, I like it. I think my kind of problem with I was listening back to your old episodes to see what the consensus was on Von Sudenfed, because mine was a little different in that I really like Mouse on Mars. Obviously, I'm here because I like MES, but I felt like the full-length collab was maybe a slight missed opportunity. Like, I felt there was about 5 good songs and the rest were kind of botched together. Like, for instance, isn't That Sound Wiped? That's just a remix of a Mouse on Mars, Wipe That Sound.
Yeah, I think so, because that's the one that came out a few years before. And yeah, and then eventually the album came out.
Yeah, because one thing I really like about Mouse on Mars is they're slightly more antic and kind of genre disrespecting kind of thing, whereas this just stays in a kind of a very clubby mode. Presumably they wanted a single to kind of, hype the project, and this does a good job of that. And, I did have this in the points, and I do like the song. I always listen to it and think like, oh, it could have just gone a bit more weird, or it could have been a bit more interesting. But I like it. It's a good vocal. The Andy and Jan are, the top guys. Yeah, thumbs up, but not 2 thumbs up, baby.
Yeah, I go back and forth on the Von Sudenfed kind of album as a whole. I do think it's better I agree. There's 4 or 5 tracks, and then the others, the ones that treat MES like the singer, which this one I think does works, but the ones that treat him like a vocal sample to cut up, I think Duck Rug that it's up against does that, are less successful. It doesn't feel like a collaboration. I've read a little bit about how they did it in the studio, and I do get the feeling that Smith was in there and they were creating it together. So I do. That means I understand that they probably had to build some relatively simple rhythms for him to kind of like sing his stuff over. But yeah, it doesn't quite hit the heights very often that either of the solo kind of stuff does. And there was talk of that second record, and who knows whether they would have kind of dug into the weirdness a little bit more, or whether it would have just fallen into more generic stuff. But not a bad one at all. And it is up against another Von Sudenfed track, which is Duck Rug, much more of an audio collage kind of idea, but still very charming in its own way. First, some Fortnite commercials. Mm-hmm. For those people that still think this is a Fallout podcast and haven't cottoned on yet.
That's it. We're just advertising for the Japanese
conglomerates.
Farewell, 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 farewell.
Make it move it.
Get it.
Make it right. Make it move it.
Get
Make it move it.
it.
Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it right. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it. Make it move it.
I wanna hear the words.
Make it move it.
And it mumble it.
Make it right. Make it move it. Make it move it.
Make it, yo, make it move it. Make it right. Make it right.
Yeah, like I said, this one very much a collage. It kind of feels very dated to me. The hippity hop samples and the Hey Riot Policeman beat. And other than him shouting chicken movie or something along those lines, I just said it's not acceptable. Yeah, yeah. Take it or leave it. Dan, what's your Duck Rug thoughts?
Well, I had it in the points, and I had it just below F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T. So technically, these two should be much closer together and harder to pass. But it feels like F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T is just much better. I guess this is like a bit like Coldcut does Malcolm McLaren.
Yeah.
I think what I realized listening to this song, listening to the kind of the cut up of his voice is what I really love is the way that he controls space and time with his voice. And when you cut it up, you lose all of that kind of ability to his insertion in the process. So what are we left with? Yeah, like a kind of a robotic MES with a kind of a slightly like a pastiche of a pastiche.
Yeah, but the thing that it does point out is that his voice alone is still just a really engaging sound, right? The sound itself, and then you add to the fact that his ear for melody and his lyrics, and like you say, his pace and his space. The fact that his voice is so untraditional and puts off so many people. If you remove that one admittedly important element, everything else is really top notch that he does, and that's why you can take his voice and just sample it and you know right away that it's him, and it still gets something of him, but you don't get much of him in this track, and that's why I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I think what I'm really saying is I think that reason is why this is not as good as PPP, despite the first one off PPP that we played in the last round, because you get like a pure hit of that space and time control. I think that's what I'm really into when it comes to MES, and less so this. But you're absolutely right. This is like sampling a really good trumpet player. Like the sound is really great, but there's little nuances that are missing.
That's also, we talked about the Pro Tools that came in around the time of Country on the Click, or maybe a little earlier, maybe even like, Marshall Suite. And sometimes they lose that. Other times it actually just nudges him into kind of a little bit more coherence, and it actually helps. But at other times it feels like he's now become just another sample in the mix.
Yeah, when it's done well, it's really effective, and it's constructive and helps the song move forward. But other times it sounds like you lose the organic quality to what's going on, and sometimes it is like the little mistakes, like the little whistles from his teeth, things like that can really sort of brighten up a song as well. So it's just catching it at the right time, the Goldilocks spot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't give this didn't appear in your rankings at all. I had it at 5th. Dan, I think you had it down in about 7th or 8th, and Stu had it in about 5th or 6th as well. So you got a little bit of love, but more of a novelty thing, I think. And I think this is going to be a much easier vote. I'm going for F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T. Dan, which way are you going?
F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T can get it.
Can get it. Has got it. Alistair?
Yeah, F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T.
Indeed. All right, so it's an easy one going through. Now that brings us to what came in 3rd place, which was Inch with 25.5 points, versus the CD in Your Hand, which came in at 8th with also 15 points. But through my convoluted decision-making process, scored lower than Duck Rug. So let's have a listen to Inch, and I'll play a little bit of the remix as well because I threw that in there. But we'll bundle them together.
But it's got to go down. The music's got to go fucking down with that. Yeah. What you best you getting him to do, Kia? Yeah.
Looks like a killer.
Indeed. So, to all intents and purposes, that is a Fall song in the sense that those lads were producing Kia. Or have a look at the thing. There's Simon Spencer and Kia something, right? They were producing Levitate. Also, so that is apparently Steve Hanley on bass and Funky Cy on drums, but they're loops. Yeah, could have had things gone differently. This would have been on Levitate. Yeah. Al, what do you make of Inch?
Really like it. I think he scored it top.
You did. It's up there top, yeah.
Yeah, it was one that I bought at the time and really loved it. I think it's just, for me, it's one of the best examples of one of my favourites, Mark Smith over a drum machine, like this and telephone thing, I suppose. Yeah, it's just got a real sort of like strutting groove to it. It doesn't lose any kind of brutality, and that kind of like beef-artian type guitar all over it is just lovely. Production's very good. You know, they got the structure of it bang on. Yeah, there's I don't think there's any fat at all whatsoever on this one. It's a really well-rendered song.
Yeah. I really like the remix. I think that's far better, nicer sounds that have dated probably a little bit better. But I understand that that's yet another step away from this being a Smith thing. But I do consider this a proper song and as close to the Fall as you're going to get, and by any other name. Yeah, I like the kind of theremin style synths and some great melodies. Actually, towards the end, there's some really nice melodies comes in. I'm kind of surprised there's no video to go with it because I think it got just outside the top 40. It almost broke the top 40. I remember buying it on 12-inch. And Van Hooligan, I don't know who that is. So just having a look. I have no idea who that person. But Dan, what about the Inch for you? You had it at your fourth.
Less convinced by the remix, which I did have in top 10, but less convinced by that. Yeah, I think it's really good. I really like the kind of. I'm usually not a fan of studio banter being pasted on, but I thought it was good here. I think he puts in a really good shift on the vocals with that kind of rising, kind of almost slightly agitated towards the end. Yeah, this would have been great on Levitate. I would love to. I'm always a fan of that song should have been on that album. And if you're a fan of like Suede or someone like that, then there's many of those. I think I'd imagine most bands have those. Why did you not put that on there?
Oh yeah,
this should have been on Levitate. Would have gone great, like a couple of songs after Old Gang, something like that. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I mean it's up there with 10 Houses of Eve. I mean it's very, very similar, and as much as I know Al loves I'm a Mummy, I think it could have easily dislodged that and sent the Mummy into B-side territory. And improved the album to no end. But it is up against another spoken word track, the CD in Your Hand, which interestingly I think appeared as the first track on that Past Gone Mad compilation. So a lot of Fall. This is probably one of the best known kind of. I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the best known spoken word MES tracks, I think. So let's have a gander at the CD.
It means to you and I and this modernity, what it means to you and I and this CD you hold in your hand. Cabbies get life story beatings. Co-workers get told stories. Resignations. The reasonable authorities get told humiliations. 5 old friends get life story. Degradations and informing. 6 your medically renewed face appears in penance. Get on Dick and Judy. Your opinion on Lennon and McCartney. Get on Same Prog Central, sat next to Fred West's Sweaty Family.
I mean, without a doubt, one of the greatest lines ever written. Get on Dick and Judy, something prog. Fred West, sweaty family. Yeah, brilliant. Al, what did CD in Your Hand, Modernity? What does it do for you?
I quite like it. I don't know if I scored it or not, but I think it's just because I missed it out on the list. But yeah, it's very funny. And another thing I quite like about the spoken word stuff is generally I don't listen to lyrics unless they really stand out. Partly because I gave up on doing that years ago after just realising that I get them all wrong anyway. So, you know, you might as well just make your own up.
Right.
So, yeah, you can actually hear what he's up to there, and the sense of humour comes across. Yeah, the Dick and Judy thing did make me giggle, and I scribbled down a little note about that. But yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's in contrast to the PPP, which is this is a little bit more silly and more in kind of line with some of the MES throwaway stuff. But I'm on board for it. Absolutely. Yeah, Dan, what's he do for you?
Yeah, this is really good. Like a lovely little miniature, great little overture, I guess. To like, I think it worked. Like you say, what did you say? It's the opening track on a Fall comp.
I think that compilation of Past Gone Mad, I've got a feeling, which was like what the 90s 2000 era kind of mid-period compilation. I've got a feeling it's on that. Let me have a check while you're letting us know what you think.
Yeah, I mean it's irreverent. It puts you right in the space of the world of the Fall and Marquis Smith, like the medically renewed face. Like there's actually, I think, in and amongst the comedy, there's some really like stark imagery. If you really kind of boil down some of the sentences, like it's like fucking hell. This is really good. This is poetry to me. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very strong case, and you always talk about him being a short story writer, a novelist, and the idea that he probably didn't have the stamina to do that kind of stuff. But in this miniature stuff, and a lot of these were, I think, just straight out recorded from when he did a run around that era when things were just totally falling apart, Levitate era, and there was no band to speak of, but he just kept going. And looking back on it, of course, that stuff's some of the best stuff that was put out. But at this time, obviously, he was scrambling and he was just doing these spoken word things. But Rollins talks about it in that in the Hanley's interview that they do with him when they were on the same bill together. He just is hilarious to hear Rollins talk about his experience of Smith's performance. But yeah,
it's interesting that this doesn't have the texture that the PPP stuff as well. This is, I mean, I know some of the.
Yeah, I mean, you put it in your third. I put it in my fourth. Al said he forgot it, of course, but you know, that's bloody Alistair for you, isn't it? But he's gonna slip it in third or fourth place, so it's done well. Yeah, but is it enough against the Inch? So, Dan, which way are you going, Inch or CD in your hand?
This is really tough. Hang on. So which way is Al gone?
He's not gone yet. You can defer if you like. He probably split his vote knowing that ruffian.
No, I'm going to commit. I'm going to go in.
All right, good. Alistair, which way are you going, CD or Inch, or do you want me to go first? Or
no, I'm going Inch.
All right, so it doesn't matter unless Stu's put Inch as his second, so Inch easily goes through. I would be torn. I think CDN is good, but I think getting PPP through is enough to get the outside flavorness of it all. And so that brings us to second place against ninth. So Dearest Friends came actually and joined top place, when you can probably work out which one hasn't appeared yet, with 32.5 points, and it's versus A Lot in a Name, another spoken word one, which came in at 12.5, so it's got a lot to do. But yeah, let's have a listen to Von Sudenfed, Dearest Friends. Very sweet, delightful. Alistair, what does Dearest Friends do for you, if anything at all?
It's all right, yeah. Not bad. Reminded me of, well, yeah, quite a bit of like some sort of African stuff, you know, like Diplo has gone a bit over the top with that one, like, but yeah, just poppy type quality to it. It's quite simple. Sounds again like another studio construction, or you know, he's just gone in and done some vocals for someone else. Clearly, I thought some of the synths were unnecessary, and I wasn't too keen on the slide guitar. That bit reminded me a bit of Happy Mondays. Do you know the one that I think it was the first one on Bummed? The one that
Lazy-itis or something like that, is it?
No, the one about I'm a simple country boy.
Yeah. Country sound.
Country sound, something like that. Yeah, but it's all right, not bad. But don't really go anywhere.
No.
It is what it is.
You put it in your second place, so you clearly
Yeah,
the Alistair of 20 minutes ago clearly felt very differently. For me, Folktronica it's definitely got elements of your Drag City 90s kind of post-rock, kind of that delayed loop, and I think it's whether intentionally or otherwise, it harkens back to the Friends track off Friends Experiment. I count my friends on one hand, and he sings about his dearest friends long gone. It's delightful. I'm an absolute sucker for this kind of very twee and cheap kind of like echoey guitar, or you know, I've done a bunch of stuff like this. It reminds me of something I did with our good friend Neil Jarvis not too long ago, and it builds it really slightly. When I'm in the right mood for it, it's full on love for this, but you know, at other times I probably would dismiss it, but today I really was well up for it. Dan, what did it do for you? You put it in your second spot.
It could have been number one on a different 20-minute window of my life. I think like the Drag City comment, I think I was going to say something very similar. Like it sounds like it could be on Camouflage by Gasta del Sol.
Yeah. Like
it's got that kind of academic reimagining of like Tropicalia or African folk music, but put through like a computer. And then you said Folktronica, because if you think about like where Jim O'Rourke's head was at that time, like he's kind of got one foot in both camps, and like Mouse on Mars clearly would have been super aware of all of that. Yeah, and it works as a really nice nightcap on the album. But I think Take Note on its own, I just think it's really lovely. I think it's a great piece of slightly egg-headed folk, but not folk, because there's no folk tradition here. This is academic music. And I think MES does a really good job. And yeah, he is being cut up. And I take your point from earlier that like sometimes cutting him up can actually add. Here it does. It's lovely. It's a lovely piece of music. And I think it's a bit more thoughtful and less throwaway than it first appears.
Yeah, it's the outlier on the album. Nothing else on the album sounds like this. The rest of it, like you kind of were alluding to, is sort of clubby and like kind of a little bit more. Yeah, this is beautiful stuff, and I think it's nice that there's only one of it. The novelty might wear off if there's a little more, but shows the scope. And I was just having a look to see if it was sampled or played by one of those dudes, whether David Grubbs had just been walking by the studio and tossed off 20 seconds of guitar that was but we will never know until that fateful day when we get Jan and the other lad on. It's only a matter of time. Andy, yeah. Sweet, it is up against a track, another spoken word track, A Lot in a Name, which got a mere 12 points, but still enough to get into the playoff position.
You can get quits in quick. There's a lot in a name. Friday. There's a lot in a name. Barking the cyanide down. Even my cat balk at that. Sign cross spent. Sign asterisk mind. Sign circle family. Reading 1. Cross of negativity. Asterisk shrug. Richard Swallow, TV father said. Nectarine number 9, Pavement, Richard Swallow, TV presenter. Rab Coke, fireman. I. Welsh, his school life in Edinburgh must.
I just realised Edwyn Welch gets a name checking there alongside Pavement and the Nectarine number 9, who are a great indie band. It's one that sounds like it's actually constructed it sounds like he's actually set it out, and then the second layer of vocals is actually designed to add to what was there in the first, and it's a little bit more composed and thought out than some of the other post Neelyman stuff. And I think the lyrics are what makes this stand out. You can get quids in quick, Friday barking, even my cat would balk at that, sign cross spent, asterisk mind sign, reading one, cross of negativity. There is a lot in a name, as my grandfather said, next to number 9 pavement, Richard Swallow, Radicoke, fireman, I Welsh in his school life in Edinburgh must have been terrible. Dan, what's it do for you?
I think the track is fine. I don't feel strongly or negatively either way. But what I do quite like about it is, as you say, this kind of like layered quality that's quite clearly mapped out piece of writing. Like, I guess this is a question for you two and for any of our listeners. Like, are there other kind of like spoken word artists who do this where it's not just one voice, where they're kind of like layers of their voice almost in competition? I guess what it reminds me of is, because isn't he a big fan of like B.S. Johnson, and you kind of have that layering and paralleling of writing. Reminds me a little bit of that and what I know about him as a writer. The song for me is, I think it just missed my top 10. It's fine. I don't dislike it. I can't say I'm raving about it, but I'd like to hear it all in context again.
Yeah, I think most of its points came from Alistair putting it in his big chunk of joint second place tunes, and then I also gave it 5 or 6. I put it about halfway down my thing for that overlaying of stuff. I don't know, you get into kind of collagey stuff like Nurse with Wound and things like that, but it's not as deliberate. But I don't know if I think it's probably just intuitive that this sounded good rather than any influence, and I certainly don't know of anybody that's doing that. But a really nice example to show that even if it is just his intuition, it isn't. There's some natural composition kind of going on in what he does. Alistair, do you love this?
I do quite like it. It's very nice and earthy, genuine sounding. I do like the layering that you've been mentioning. It's all like the hissing, and I like the echoey kind of acoustics that you pick up on from the vocal. It's almost as if it's been recorded at a gig or something like that, and then they've just taken it back and then started using that as raw material for the studio stuff. It reminds me a lot of the more like the kind of like radio play type production. I quite like those qualities. It's collage. It's loads of little things, but it's very subtle. There's nothing that's kicking your face off in this. So I find it very easy listening.
Well, it's very smart, a smart move, but I think it's got its work cut out. Let's take a vote. I am going for Dearest Friends. Alistair, which way are you leaning?
Dearest Friends, I think. Indeed. Dan?
3 friends together.
Three best friends. We already said that. Cockney Watch Dogs reference. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that what has actually come top is the Ghost Digital track that he did with Einar from the Sugar Cubes, who also famously was the person that first put them on in Iceland in 1982 in the Hex era. So a lot of history in this track, as well as some real nice kind of turn of the century techno-y, big beat nonsense. Let's have a listen to Ghost Digital, Not Clean.
How abstract can you get? How abstract can you get? Two gentlemen meet. They start a small discussion. They discuss chord when they meet. I'm a chord, and I've become the topic of discussion. They discuss the origins of chord. Not clean. Not clean.
Where's the card? We're getting quite reasonable about this. Give us the fucking card. Goddamn bastard. Gotta go with the goddamn chips.
Yeah, so a delightful tune, very much unknown. I don't think I was aware of it or heard it at all until I started last year looking into all the stuff for this. It got a lot of love. I think it was, it was. Stu put it first, I'll put it second, as he did with every. No, you put it joint top with Inch, and I had it in my third place, and Daniel had it down in about fifth. So we all recognised something in it. But Alistair, what did you make of Not Clean?
Well, I'd never heard it before, and I didn't know any of the backstory about what it was, if it was anything like that. But I'd liked all the beats, thought it was recorded really well. There's some singy bits in it, and I didn't mind it because they'd done it well, and it was subtle, and it suited everything that was going on, and it suited the whole dynamics, the way that the vocals kind of dropped in. So the whole structure of it's quite nice. There's no sort of excess stuff going on that's completely unnecessary. But yeah, it sounds like another one that's been put about in the studio.
I imagine that as silly as the COD message was, there was probably some underlying political bent that was serious that Smith probably didn't take quite as seriously as Einar did. And Einar eventually ended up on the Reykjavik City Council, like in the 2010s at some point. So I think Ghost Digital did this record. They've done 3, and it's very much kind of a rotating guest singer. So I think David Byrne and Damon Albarn have kind of been in the mix, as well as a bunch of other people. It came out officially originally on Honest John's. Isn't Albarn involved in Honest John's? That's his record label, right? Yeah. So
nice sort of like old African stuff that he's put out.
Yeah, no, it's a great label. Absolutely great. As infuriating as Albarn is, he definitely puts out a lot of good stuff on that label. Dan, what do you make of Ghost Digital?
I was reading quite a while ago one of Johnny Rotten's books where he talks about Björk, and he diagnoses the issue of Björk in her solo career as lacking an Einar in her life. And I took umbrage with that because I just listened to all of Björk and the Sugar Cubes and the other projects, and the second and third Sugar Cubes records are like nails on a chalkboard for me. So I kind of took against him because they're like slightly wacky, but it works here, doesn't it? And like it makes me realise that Mez has had a lot of Einars in his life, from Gavin Friday to Neville Wilding to like various people who will pop up and counterpoint his vocals, and it does remind me of that in a really cool and interesting way. I think I underrated this. I had it about 5th or 6th, as you said. I think that's because I wanted to showcase some of the spoken bits, but if I was being totally honest, this is probably a worthy winner for this week.
I agree. It's almost like it was too obvious, and that was in this kind of competition. It's been like, yeah, of course, the Von Sudenfed and stuff like this is top notch, and or in the context of this group of songs, is definitely really good stuff. But yeah, it's very easy to kind of dismiss the spoken word stuff because it is shorter or more abstract. So I'm glad we've given it some time in the sun. But I think, I can't argue with the fact that this deserves to be going through to the kind of final 20. So
And I presume he's referencing, because he would have remembered the COD wars of the 70s. And it's surely that, right?
I mean, that will be part of it, but I just wonder at that point, this was 2003 or whatever. So I imagine that there is some political stuff flying around as well as those kind of historical things.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think even though it was done in that silly way, I imagine that they were taking it like it had a little bit more of a serious message, and it wasn't just, fish is funny, cheese is funny, monkeys are funny.
No, that's not what exactly. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I think as someone who worked in import-export, as he once did, like the Cod Wars would have been and he's always been
Oh,
the man
I get you. Yeah.
to invoke a historical grudge, or like some like with some sergeants from the U.S. Civil War, like he like historical conflict is always there in the present, which we're seeing in our life, right?
Yeah, I just assumed, as with the Saturn V, that he'd walked into a song that was already written and he said it's about COD, and then he just riffed on COD like he just riffed on Saturn V. But the fact that his depth of reading means that even if he's just riffing, he's going to throw in multiple references. Oh yeah, on Smith's side, I'm almost absolutely. I think he's almost certainly referring to that plus whatever else is going on. I was thinking of it more from the Einar thing. I just assumed that he was the one who said, we're going to sing about COD, Mark. Mark was like, all right, cock. But what's the line is something like, we give us the fucking COD. It is, he almost ruins it with stuff like that, but it's enough. So yeah, that takes us to PPP1, Flight and Mouse, Inch, Dearest Friends, and Ghost Digital has gone through. So once again, we've got a good showing of the kind of electronic-y, big beat, techno-y side of things, and just a smattering of the post-Neely MES. Yeah, and Goodbye to Repetition by Tackhead, a song which none of us ever have to listen to again. Thanks very much for dropping by again, Dan. Hopefully it will become a regular occurrence, and very happy to have you. And Alistair, a pleasure as always. I will see you tomorrow if you're around. All right.
Yeah, like that. What time's that at?
I'll send you a message when I find out myself. But you've sent us a new theme tune, so I'm going to play it for this MES thing. Alistair's spanking new theme tune. And take care, the both of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Al.
Thank you. It is very Panzer, isn't it, Al? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to play the whole thing.
Yeah.